The House That Lives Two Lives. The Jameson family home at 1247 Maple Street in Salem, Oregon, exists in two realities simultaneously. For most of the time, it's a normal suburban house where current owners Mark and Linda Jameson live with their teenage children. But on random nights throughout the year, the house shifts into an alternate dimension where the previous owners, the Morrison family, who died in a car crash in 1987, are still alive and going about their daily routines, as if they never left. The dimensional shifting was first documented in 2003, when neighbors began reporting lights and activity in the Jameson house during times when the family was out of town. Police investigations found the house empty but warm, with evidence of recent cooking, television programs still running, and beds that appeared to have been slept in by people who weren't there. Security cameras installed by the confused homeowners captured something impossible: footage of the Morrison family, Robert, Susan, and their twin daughters, moving through rooms, preparing meals, and living their lives in a house they had vacated 16 years earlier. The cameras showed both families existing in the same space, but apparently unable to see or interact with each other. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a quantum physicist from Oregon State University, studied the phenomenon and documented what she termed dimensional bleeding, periods when the house exists simultaneously in multiple realities. During these episodes, which last between 4 and 18 hours, the Morrison family continues their lives as if 1987 never ended, while the Jameson family experiences unexplained temperature changes, electronic malfunctions, and the distinct feeling of being watched by invisible presences. The most unsettling evidence came when researchers discovered that the Morrison family was aging normally in their dimension. Recent footage shows Robert and Susan Morrison as they would appear today if they had lived, complete with gray hair and age-appropriate clothing. Their twin daughters have grown into adults and occasionally bring children of their own to visit their dimensional grandparents. Independent verification came from comparing the security footage to family photographs provided by Morrison relatives. The people in the dimensional bleeding episodes matched perfectly with how the deceased family members would look today, suggesting that their parallel existence had continued uninterrupted in an alternate timeline where the fatal car accident never occurred. The dimensional overlap isn't limited to visual phenomena. Audio recordings capture conversations in which the Morrison family discusses current events, using information they shouldn't have access to in 1987. They mention smartphones, social media, and political events that occurred decades after their death, suggesting that their parallel dimension receives information from our timeline. Property records revealed that similar dimensional bleeding events have been reported at other houses where families died unexpectedly. The phenomenon appears to occur when traumatic events create dimensional scars that allow alternate realities to bleed through, showing us glimpses of what might have been if tragedy hadn't intervened. The Jameson house represents documented proof that parallel dimensions exist alongside our own, and that under certain conditions, the barriers between realities become permeable enough for alternate versions of our lives to leak through into our awareness. The Future Echo Forest. Deep in the Olympic National Forest in Washington State lies a hiking trail where dimensions have become temporally unstable, allowing visitors to encounter future versions of themselves and witness events that haven't happened yet. The phenomenon, documented by the Park Service since 1994, has created a zone where linear time breaks down and multiple timelines converge. Rangers first became aware of the anomaly when hikers began reporting encounters with themselves from tomorrow, meeting their own future selves walking the same trail while wearing different clothes and showing knowledge of events that hadn't yet occurred. These weren't visions or hallucinations. The future selves were solid, interactive, and able to provide specific information about the immediate future. Dr. Michael Chen was hiking the trail in August 2008 when he encountered his future self returning from the summit. The future Chen warned him about a rock slide that would occur 3 hours later at a specific location on the trail. Following his future self's advice, Dr. Chen took an alternate route and later confirmed that a rock slide had indeed blocked the original path at exactly the predicted time. Park Ranger Jennifer Walsh documented over 200 similar incidents where hikers received warnings, advice, or information from future versions of themselves. The encounters typically lasted 10 to 15 minutes and occurred at specific locations along the trail where electromagnetic readings show unusual dimensional instability. The most extraordinary case involved photographer Lisa Rodriguez, who encountered not just her future self, but an entire group of people she hadn't met yet. Her future self introduced her to individuals who would become her hiking companions on a trip planned for the following year. 6 months later, Rodriguez joined a hiking club and met all the people her future self had introduced her to, exactly as predicted. Scientific investigation revealed that the temporal anomalies follow a consistent pattern. Future encounters occur at precise GPS coordinates, where geological surveys show unusual crystalline formations in the bedrock. These natural crystal structures appear to create a resonance effect that destabilizes local spacetime, allowing different temporal states to coexist. The future echo effect isn't limited to human encounters. Hikers report seeing future versions of the forest itself, trails that don't exist yet, new ranger stations under construction, and even future storm damage that later occurs exactly as witnessed. The dimensional leakage appears to show the most probable future timeline for the area. Dr. Sarah Kim's temporal research team found that information gathered from future encounters has a 94% accuracy rate when verified after the predicted events occur. The future selves provide detailed, specific information that proves their authenticity and demonstrates that multiple timeline states can exist simultaneously. The Olympic Forest Future Echo Zone represents compelling evidence that time isn't linear and that future dimensional states can leak backwards into present experience, allowing us to literally meet ourselves from tomorrow and receive information from timelines that haven't unfolded yet. The medieval overlay. Several city blocks in downtown Prague experience periodic dimensional shifts where the modern city is replaced by its exact medieval counterpart from the 14th century. During these episodes, which last between 30 minutes and several hours, visitors find themselves in a fully functional medieval town, complete with period-appropriate inhabitants, architecture, and technology. The dimensional overlay was first documented in 1995 when tourist Margaret Fleming entered what she thought was a historical reenactment area, only to discover that the medieval environment was completely real. The cobblestone streets were authentic stone. The buildings showed genuine wear from centuries of use, and the people spoke Middle Czech and appeared genuinely unaware that they were living in the past. Security cameras positioned around the affected area capture the transition as it occurs. Modern buildings fade away like dissolving photographs, while medieval structures materialize in their place. The transformation follows a specific pattern, beginning at the Old Town Square and expanding outward in concentric circles until approximately 4 city blocks exist in the 14th century. Dr. Pavel Novas, a historian from Charles University, has documented extensive interactions with the medieval inhabitants during dimensional overlay events. The people are not actors or reenactors. They possess detailed knowledge of 14th century life, speak authentic period dialects, and react with genuine confusion when presented with modern objects or concepts. The medieval dimension includes functioning shops, taverns, and workshops where period-appropriate goods are produced using authentic techniques and materials. Visitors can purchase items crafted by medieval artisans, and chemical analysis confirms that these objects were created using period-appropriate materials and methods that haven't been used for centuries. The most remarkable aspect of the medieval overlay is its historical accuracy. Architectural historians confirm that the buildings match precisely with 14th century Prague, as documented in historical records. Even the population corresponds to census data from that era, with inhabitants whose names and occupations match archived municipal records from the 1300s. During overlay events, modern technology ceases to function within the affected area. Cell phones, digital cameras, and electronic devices become inoperable, while the medieval environment operates according to its own physical laws. Visitors report feeling like they've literally traveled back in time rather than visiting a parallel dimension. The dimensional shifts occur without warning, typically during overcast weather conditions, when electromagnetic activity in the area reaches specific threshold levels. Meteorological data shows correlation between dimensional overlay events and atmospheric conditions that mirror historical weather patterns from the medieval period. The Prague medieval overlay provides documented evidence that alternate dimensional versions of historical periods can bleed through into present reality, suggesting that all moments in time might exist simultaneously and become accessible when dimensional barriers weaken. The duplicate city. Residents of Duluth, Minnesota, occasionally wake up to find their city replaced by an alternate version where key historical events unfolded differently. This parallel Duluth exists in a dimension where the 1918 Cloquet fire never occurred, resulting in a dramatically different city layout with buildings, streets, and landmarks that don't exist in our timeline. The dimensional replacement was first noticed in 2001 when longtime resident Frank Morrison went to visit his childhood neighborhood and found streets that had been destroyed in the 1918 fire were not only intact but showed continuous habitation for over a century. The buildings displayed architectural evolution and aging that would have occurred if they had never been destroyed. During these dimensional episodes, Duluth exists simultaneously in two realities. Visitors can walk down streets that were destroyed decades ago, enter buildings that never survived the historical fire, and meet alternate versions of residents whose families took different paths in the parallel timeline where the disaster never occurred. Dr. Rebecca Foster, an urban planner from the University of Minnesota, mapped the differences between the two versions of Duluth and found that the alternate city contains over 300 buildings that don't exist in our reality. The parallel dimension shows how the city would have developed without the traumatic disruption of the massive fire that reshaped its growth pattern. The alternate Duluth isn't just structurally different. Its inhabitants have lived completely different lives. Families that died in the fire in our timeline are alive and thriving in the parallel dimension. Businesses that were destroyed have continued operating for over a century, showing natural evolution and growth that would have occurred without the historical catastrophe. Photographs taken during dimensional replacement events show the same physical locations, displaying entirely different architecture and development patterns. The parallel city appears more prosperous and densely populated, suggesting that avoiding the historical disaster led to accelerated economic growth and urban development. The most unsettling aspect of the duplicate city phenomenon is that both versions feel equally real and solid to visitors. People can interact normally with inhabitants of the parallel Duluth, purchase goods from businesses that don't exist in our timeline, and even stay overnight in hotels that were destroyed in our reality's 1918 fire. Historical research confirmed that the parallel dimension shows precise accuracy in its alternative development. Urban planners have verified that the alternate city's growth patterns match exactly what architectural historians predicted Duluth would have looked like without the fire's devastating impact. The duplicate city episodes typically last 36 hours before reality shifts back to our familiar version of Duluth. However, visitors sometimes return with objects purchased in the parallel dimension, items that continue to exist in our reality even after the dimensional replacement ends. The backwards physics zone. In a remote section of Montana's Glacier National Park, hikers encounter an area where the fundamental laws of physics operate in reverse, suggesting that a dimension with opposite physical properties has leaked into our reality. Water flows upward, objects fall toward the sky, and fire freezes while ice burns in a zone where cause and effect have been inverted. Park Ranger. Tom Bradley first documented the backwards physics phenomenon in 2006, when he observed a stream flowing uphill in a steady, consistent manner that violated gravity. Initial investigations revealed that the anomaly affected a roughly circular area with a diameter of approximately 200 meters, where normal physical laws were replaced by their exact opposites. Within the reversed physics zone, dropped objects accelerate upward at the same rate they would normally fall downward. Visitors must secure themselves to prevent floating away into the sky, while rocks and debris drift upward in perfect reverse of normal gravitational behavior. The effect is precise and consistent, suggesting that gravitational force hasn't disappeared but has been inverted. Dr. Lisa Chang, a theoretical physicist from MIT, conducted extensive testing within the anomaly and found that all fundamental forces operate in reverse. Electromagnetic fields repel rather than attract. Thermal energy flows from cold to hot objects, and even time perception becomes distorted as cause and effect relationships invert. The most extraordinary discovery was that entropy decreases within the backwards physics zone. Broken objects spontaneously repair themselves, mixed substances separate into component parts, and complex systems become more organized over time rather than degrading. The area appears to be governed by physical laws from a universe where the arrow of time points in the opposite direction. Independent verification by multiple research teams confirmed that the reversed physics effects are real and measurable. Water consistently flows upward, fire produces cold instead of heat, and batteries discharge energy back into themselves, while electrical devices run backwards to their previous states. The boundaries of the backwards physics zone are sharply defined, with normal physics resuming immediately outside the affected area. Visitors can experience the transition by extending their arm across the boundary, feeling normal gravity on one hand, while the other experiences reverse gravitational force. Military and aerospace researchers have expressed intense interest in the backwards physics zone for its potential applications in propulsion and energy systems. However, the anomaly appears to be expanding slowly, growing approximately 1 meter per year in all directions. Local indigenous tribal elders report that their ancestors were aware of the area and considered it a gateway to the upside-down world, where all natural laws were reversed. Their oral traditions describe the zone as a place where spirits from an opposite reality could enter our world. The backwards physics zone represents documented evidence that dimensions with inverted physical laws can overlap with our reality, creating pockets where the fundamental forces that govern our universe operate according to completely different principles. The probability leak. In the small town of Millfield, Ohio, residents experience random probability distortions, where highly unlikely events become commonplace, while normal everyday occurrences become impossible. During these episodes, which locals call luck storms, the fundamental laws of chance break down as probability patterns from an alternate dimension bleed into our reality. The phenomenon was first scientifically documented in 2004 when statistician Dr. Robert Kim investigated reports of impossible coincidences occurring with supernatural frequency. During a single week, 17 residents won various lottery prizes, 3 people found lost family members after decades of separation, and 5 couples met their future spouses in improbable circumstances that defied statistical analysis. Probability distortions in Millfield follow inverse patterns where rare events occur multiple times, while common events become extraordinarily unlikely. During peak probability storms, residents report that their car keys consistently appear in impossible locations, traffic lights malfunction in synchronized patterns, and random events cluster in ways that violate the laws of statistical distribution. Dr. Kim's research team documented probability patterns that shouldn't exist in normal reality. Coin flips during distortion events produce heads or tails, in sequences that match complex mathematical patterns rather than random distribution. Card shuffles result in mathematically perfect arrangements, and dice consistently roll numbers that correspond to significant dates or personal information. The most extraordinary aspect of Millfield's probability leaks is their predictive nature. Unlikely events that occur during storms often foreshadow future developments that later unfold exactly as suggested by the initial, improbable coincidences. Residents learn to interpret probability distortions as glimpses of alternate timelines where different choices and chances create different outcomes. Medical researcher Dr. Sarah Wilson found that during probability storms, genetic mutations occur at rates 10,000 times higher than normal, but these mutations are consistently beneficial rather than harmful. People develop enhanced abilities, chronic conditions spontaneously resolve, and DNA repairs itself in ways that violate biological probability. The probability distortions appear to originate from dimensional overlap, with a reality where chance operates according to different mathematical principles. In the alternate dimension, improbable events have high probability while routine occurrences are rare, creating an inverse probability universe that occasionally bleeds through into our timeline. Weather monitoring equipment reveals correlation between probability storms and specific atmospheric conditions, involving electromagnetic field fluctuations that occur in patterns matching advanced mathematical sequences. The distortions intensify during periods when local magnetic fields align with geometric configurations that appear to thin dimensional barriers. Millfield residents have learned to navigate probability storms by understanding that during these events, following hunches and intuition leads to positive outcomes, while logical planning produces unexpected obstacles. The town has become a natural laboratory for studying how alternate probability dimensions can influence random events in our reality. The living architecture. Buildings in downtown Seattle occasionally transform into biological entities with nervous systems, circulatory systems, and apparent consciousness, suggesting that a dimension where architecture is alive has begun merging with our reality. During these episodes, structures breathe, react to stimuli, and communicate with inhabitants through changes in temperature, lighting, and acoustic properties. The phenomenon was first documented in 2010 when maintenance workers at the Columbia Center noticed that the building's HVAC system was responding to human emotions rather than programmed settings. Security footage revealed walls that appeared to pulse rhythmically, elevator cars that moved according to passengers' unspoken destinations, and lighting systems that adjusted automatically to create optimal psychological environments. Dr. Amanda Foster, a biomechanical engineer from the University of Washington, investigated the living architecture phenomenon and found that affected buildings display characteristics of biological organisms. Thermal imaging reveals circulation patterns resembling cardiovascular systems. Acoustic monitoring detects rhythmic sounds similar to heartbeats, and electromagnetic sensors record neural activity patterns within the structural frameworks. The biological transformation appears complete rather than superficial. Structural analysis reveals that steel and concrete components have developed cellular properties while maintaining their architectural strength. Building materials show signs of metabolism, growth, and self-repair that operate through mechanisms that don't exist in conventional construction materials. During active phases, the living buildings demonstrate apparent intelligence and emotional responses. They adjust internal environments to optimize comfort for specific individuals, respond to spoken requests for temperature or lighting changes, and appear to learn occupants' preferences over time. Some buildings show signs of mood variations, becoming grumpy during bad weather or excited during celebrations. Independent verification came from multiple engineering firms that confirmed the biological transformation of building materials. Steel beams show cellular structures that pulse with nutritional transport. Concrete walls display neural networks that conduct electrical signals, and glass surfaces demonstrate properties of permeable membranes that regulate environmental exchange. The most remarkable aspect of living architecture is its enhanced functionality. Biological buildings require less energy, maintain optimal environmental conditions automatically, and demonstrate self-healing properties that repair structural damage without human intervention. They appear to be more efficient and sustainable than conventional architecture. Communication with the living buildings occurs through biofeedback rather than traditional interfaces. Occupants report sensing the building's mood and being able to influence its behavior through focused intention and emotional states. The structures appear to develop relationships with regular inhabitants, responding more favorably to familiar people. The architectural transformation appears to be spreading slowly through downtown Seattle, with adjacent buildings gradually developing biological properties through contact with already transformed structures. The phenomenon suggests that an entire dimension where organic architecture is the norm may be gradually merging with our reality. The Emotion Physics Laboratory. At the Stanford Research Institute, scientists discovered a laboratory where emotions directly affect physical reality, suggesting dimensional bleed-through from a universe where consciousness and matter interact according to different physical laws. In this contaminated space, human feelings can alter temperature, manipulate gravity, and even change the atomic structure of materials. The emotion physics interaction was first noticed in 2007 when researcher Dr. Patricia Wong found that her experimental results varied dramatically, depending on her emotional state, while conducting experiments. Further investigation revealed that the entire laboratory had become a zone where psychological conditions directly influence physical phenomena in measurable ways. Within the affected laboratory, negative emotions consistently produce specific physical effects. Anger increases local temperature and electromagnetic field strength. Sadness causes objects to become heavier and fall faster. And fear creates electrical interference that disrupts sensitive equipment. Positive emotions produce opposite effects, with joy decreasing gravity and love increasing the coherence of laser beams. Dr. Wong's team documented over 2,000 experiments confirming that emotional states can be measured through their direct physical manifestations. Specialized instruments detect emotional fields that extend several meters from individuals and can be mapped with the same precision as electromagnetic phenomena. The emotional fields appear to operate as a fifth fundamental force that governs matter behavior in the contaminated space. The most extraordinary discovery was that groups of people can combine their emotional states to create powerful collective effects. Teams experiencing synchronized emotions can levitate objects, alter the rate of radioactive decay, and even influence the probability of quantum measurement outcomes. The laboratory has become a natural testing ground for consciousness-based physics. Independent verification by multiple research institutions confirmed that the emotion physics effects are real, measurable, and consistent. The phenomenon appears to result from dimensional overlap, with a reality where consciousness is a fundamental force that directly shapes material reality rather than emerging from complex neural activity. Medical monitoring reveals that people working in the emotion physics laboratory develop enhanced sensitivity to others' emotional states and demonstrate improved ability to control their own psychological conditions. Extended exposure appears to create permanent changes in neural processing that persist even outside the affected area. The emotional effects are strongest in areas where intense psychological research has been conducted, suggesting that concentrated mental activity may thin the barriers between dimensions where different mind-matter interaction laws apply. The laboratory has become a gateway between realities with fundamentally different relationships between consciousness and physics. Security protocols require emotional stability, monitoring for all personnel, as extreme psychological states can create dangerous physical effects including spontaneous combustion, localized gravitational anomalies, and electromagnetic pulses that damage sensitive equipment throughout the facility. The Time Dilation Neighborhood. Residents of Maplewood Drive in suburban Denver experience random time dilation events, where different houses exist in accelerated or decelerated temporal fields, suggesting dimensional overlap with realities where time flows at different rates. During these episodes, families aging at dramatically different speeds live next door to each other in the same physical space. The temporal anomaly was first documented in 2012, when neighbors noticed that the Johnson family appeared to be aging rapidly, while the Miller family seemed frozen in time. Over the course of what felt like several months to outside observers, the Johnsons aged approximately 5 years, while the Millers experienced only a few days of subjective time. Dr. Angela Rodriguez, a temporal physicist from the University of Colorado, established monitoring stations throughout the neighborhood and confirmed that different properties experience time at measurably different rates. Some houses exist in accelerated time fields where minutes pass like hours, while others slow time to near stasis, where days feel like minutes. The time dilation effects are strongest during specific weather conditions when atmospheric pressure and electromagnetic activity reach threshold levels that appear to destabilize local temporal consistency. Meteorological data shows correlation between temporal anomalies and storm systems that create electromagnetic field patterns resembling those predicted for dimensional boundaries. Residents affected by time dilation report that life continues normally within their temporal field, but interaction with neighbors becomes increasingly difficult as time differential increases. Conversations become impossible when one family experiences minutes while another experiences hours during the same interaction period. Medical examination reveals that accelerated aging during fast time episodes involves normal biological processes happening at increased rates rather than pathological deterioration. People in fast time zones require more frequent meals and sleep, but maintain normal health within their temporal reference frame. The most disturbing aspect of the time dilation neighborhood is that families can become temporally isolated from each other, even while living side by side. Children in slow time zones watch their friends in normal time zones grow up and graduate while they experience only days or weeks of subjective time. Property values in the Maplewood Drive area have become impossible to establish since houses exist in different temporal markets. Real estate agents report that some properties age decades while others remain perpetually new, creating a neighborhood where time itself has become a variable rather than a constant. Emergency services face unique challenges responding to calls in the time dilation zone, as paramedics and fire departments must account for temporal differential when providing assistance. Response times become meaningless when houses exist in different temporal reference frames. The consciousness mirror dimension. In a research facility at UC Berkeley, scientists discovered a room where human thoughts become visible as physical manifestations, suggesting dimensional bleed-through from a reality where consciousness and matter exist in perfect symmetry. Within this space, mental processes appear as tangible objects that can be observed, measured, and even physically manipulated. The consciousness manifestation phenomenon was first noticed in 2015 when neuroscientist Dr. Michael Chen observed that his thoughts were appearing as translucent geometric shapes floating in the air around him. Initial attempts to dismiss the experience as hallucination were abandoned when multiple researchers confirmed they could see identical thought forms appearing during controlled experiments. Within the affected laboratory, different types of thoughts manifest as distinct visual and physical phenomena. Analytical thinking appears as crystalline structures with sharp geometric patterns. Creative thoughts manifest as flowing, organic shapes with shifting colors. And emotional states create atmospheric effects that influence temperature and lighting throughout the space. Dr. Chen's research team found that the thought manifestations aren't merely visual. They have measurable physical properties including mass, electromagnetic signatures, and the ability to interact with material objects. Complex thoughts can form structures substantial enough to support small objects or influence the behavior of sensitive electronic equipment. The most remarkable discovery was that multiple people's thoughts can combine to create collective manifestations that are more complex and stable than individual thought forms. When research teams focus on shared concepts, their combined mental energy creates persistent structures that remain visible and interactive for hours after the original thoughts occurred. Independent verification by consciousness researchers from multiple institutions confirmed that the thought manifestation effects are real and follow consistent patterns. Mathematical thoughts create precise geometric forms, while abstract concepts produce more fluid manifestations that change shape according to the thinker's understanding and emotional relationship to the ideas. The consciousness mirror room appears to exist at the intersection of multiple dimensions, where different mind-matter interaction principles apply. Brain imaging reveals that people working in the space develop enhanced neural connectivity and demonstrate improved ability to visualize complex concepts even outside the affected area. The room has become a natural laboratory for studying the relationship between consciousness and reality, providing direct visual evidence that thoughts have measurable physical properties in certain dimensional conditions. The research has implications for understanding how consciousness might shape reality in ways that conventional physics doesn't recognize. Security protocols require mental disciplines training for all personnel, as negative or chaotic thoughts can create potentially dangerous manifestations, including sharp crystalline structures, toxic atmospheric effects, and electromagnetic interference that damages sensitive research equipment throughout the facility. Conclusion: these 10 documented cases of dimensional leakage represent more than unexplained anomalies. They're evidence that our reality isn't as stable or isolated as we assume. From houses that exist in multiple timelines simultaneously to forests where we can meet our future selves, these incidents prove that the boundaries between parallel dimensions are far more permeable than science acknowledges. What unites these extraordinary events isn't just their impossibility, but their consistency. They follow patterns that suggest our universe exists alongside countless other realities, with different physical laws, different histories, and different relationships between consciousness and matter. When these dimensional barriers weaken, we get glimpses of worlds where time flows backwards, where thoughts become solid objects, and where probability itself operates according to different mathematical principles. Perhaps most unsettling is what these dimensional leaks reveal about the nature of reality itself. They suggest that our universe isn't a closed system, but part of an infinite multiverse where every possible variation of existence plays out simultaneously. The medieval Prague that occasionally replaces the modern city shows us a timeline where history unfolded differently. The backwards physics zone demonstrates that universes with inverted natural laws exist alongside our own. The increasing frequency of these dimensional incidents raises disturbing questions about the stability of our reality. Are the barriers between dimensions weakening? Are we witnessing the early stages of a dimensional convergence where multiple realities begin to merge? Or have these leaks always occurred, and we're only now developing the tools and awareness to recognize them? These 10 cases prove that parallel dimensions aren't theoretical constructs, but observable realities that occasionally bleed through into our awareness. They suggest that everything we think we know about the uniqueness and permanence of our universe is fundamentally wrong. We're not living in a single, isolated reality, but in one strand of an infinite web of interconnected dimensions where every possibility exists simultaneously. The evidence is clear. Our dimension is leaking, other realities are bleeding through, and the solid, predictable universe we thought we inhabited is far stranger, more fluid, and more permeable than we ever imagined. The question isn't whether parallel dimensions exist, it's how many of them we're already living in without realizing it.